So, here's a take that you probably won't find surprising, but I think that director Roland Emmerich makes really bad movies. And if you don't believe me, I'd like to point you to his body of work. However, despite his 40-year legacy of garbage, he has managed to make 2 movies that I actually kind of like. One of which is Stargate, the sci-fi action-adventure film that had the courage to ask important questions, like how does Kurt Russell look in a flat top? Do people actually like Fifth Avenue bars? And should children play with guns?
If you squeeze me, I make bad people go away.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. Do you know who built the pyramids?
Probably extraterrestrials.
Well, then I've got a movie made just for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a cigarette, folks, as we take a spoiler-free look at Stargate. So, Stargate is the story of Dr. Daniel Jackson, an Egyptologist who is in terrible need of a Claritin. He also suffers from severe social anxiety, wears glasses, does research that no one takes seriously, and is what you and I might call dork! And he's been recruited by the government for a top-secret project, translating Egyptian hieroglyphics that have been found on ancient tablets that are currently the subject of military research. Overseeing this research is Colonel Jack O'Neill, who has just been called back into action after suffering the loss of his son, who died from a tragic gun accident.
Guns are good. In fact, did you know that Jesus and Moses used guns to conquer the Romans?
Now, is it a smart idea to let a man who spends his days in his dead son's bedroom with a loaded gun back into active service? Probably not, but it's a military decision. And if it's one thing I know for certain, it's that the military never makes mistakes. After arriving at a secret underground facility, Daniel gets to work on his translations, and he's quickly able to correct some mistakes that have already been made. However, there are other symbols that are harder for him to crack, so much so that after 2 weeks of work, he hasn't made any progress. But luckily, while getting some much-needed coffee, Daniel just so happens to see a news article that just so happens to be on the front page of a newspaper, that just so happens to be being read by this guard, that just so happens to be about a star constellation, that just so happens to have a similar shape to one of the hieroglyphs that he's been working on.
I guess it all worked out for everyone.
So, Daniel gathers everyone together to share the good news that the hieroglyphs are not words, they are actually star constellations, and the tablets are a star map. A breakthrough that is so impressive that the military decides to show Daniel the rest of their research.
It's your Stargate.
Using Daniel's findings, the research team is able to bring the Stargate online for the first time in thousands of years. So, Colonel O'Neill, Daniel, and a group of elite soldiers set off on a mission to see what's on the other side of the Stargate. And what they find is more than they ever could have bargained for, as they not only learn more about the truth of ancient Egypt, but have to fight an ancient alien enemy to not only save Earth, but the mysterious planet that they've arrived on. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say that Stargate is the greatest movie ever made, because it's not. In fact, I would say that it has more than its fair share of problems. However, there is something that I really like about this movie, and that mostly comes down to the fact that it's a fun action-adventure that doesn't try to be more than what it is. A simple, straightforward, plot-driven movie that has a 3-act structure. And honestly, that's all that this kind of movie needs to be. The fact that they don't spend too much time focusing on details, like how the Stargate works, actually works to the movie's favor, because it doesn't matter how it works, it's just a plot device that moves the movie forward. However, in plot-driven movies, you still need to have good characters so the audience has something to relate to in the story. And sadly, that is where the script in Stargate falls short, as most of the characters are fairly underdeveloped, with the exception of Kurt Russell's character, who's the only character that really has an arc in the film. When it comes to the acting, Kurt Russell and James Spader are doing the brunt of the work. Now, that's not to say that everyone else is bad. The supporting cast plays their parts just fine. It's just that Russell and Spader are the movie's focus. Luckily, the two of them are very good, and at this point in their career, were very seasoned actors. So, they are able to bring a lot to the roles, even if the script was a bit lackluster. And by now, you're probably thinking, geez, I thought you liked this movie. Well, I do. I'm just trying to be as honest as I can, so I don't want to overplay how good it is. However, I will say that the movie score is actually very good, and when you consider the fact that it was composer David Arnold's second composing job on a feature film, it's actually more impressive. Now, there is certainly a big John Williams influence to the score. In fact, there are some sections that are very reminiscent of E.T. and Star Wars. but I think that's fine. There's no problem in taking inspiration from one of the greatest movie composers in film history. The Stargate theme that you hear throughout the movie is actually one of my favorite film scores to listen to, and if you're a film score fan who hasn't heard it yet, I really think you should. So, with all that said, would I recommend this movie? Sure. Despite its flaws, I still think it's a fun movie. It's a simple premise that's easy to follow, but not so simple that you're bored by it, and it features a pair of lead actors who always give solid performances. It's available on streaming platforms, and in fact, it's free on YouTube. So, if you haven't seen it, check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed.